Good afternoon. My name is Mark Goodman. I represent Score Chicago. You're watching live interactive call-in TV here on CAN TV 21. This is our fifth guest in our elevator pitch contest, and I'll give you a little, just one overhead thing here. Our guest is Ben Wilson of Peter Field. Now, each one of our elevator pitch contestants here essentially starts out by giving their elevator pitch, and Ben has a little different twist on a pitch, a little bit of today, tomorrow, and the future. So, Ben, why don't you give them your elevator pitch?
Hey, Mark, thanks for having us on the TV today. I really appreciate it. So I work for a company named Peter Field. We're right here in Chicago. We started making custom bow ties, neckties, and pocket squares out of the house. Since then, we've grown to a 10-person team here in the downtown area, where we design, manufacture, and we also do alterations for men's and women's clothing right here in the Loop. Down the road, we're going to have a retail presence, whether it's downtown or in the city, as well as in the city manufacturing, designing, constructing, and creating everything in-house right here in the city for the members, of the community. And what that brings to us is affordable men's and women's clothing, as well as jobs here for local people in the city. So really excited for it.
So I'm going to put in a question in the middle here before we go to if you win the $5,000 prize, because I think it's a little bit interesting. Is tell me a little bit about yourself and what motivated you to start Peter Field.
Sure. So my business partner and I, we both worked at a men's clothing store together, and what we learned there was it doesn't have to be that way. Clothes should fit, and people pay too much for everything. And once we started diving into where manufacturing is located and how other companies do it, we knew that we could do it better. My business partner, like I mentioned, his middle name's Peter, my middle name is Field. That's who Peter Field is. And what he was doing for a while was selling ties out of the house. We knew that there was a need for custom wedding parties. And, groomsmen are 4 or 5, even more in some particular cases. So what ended up happening, Mark, is Nicholas ran with it for a while, and he was in a spare bedroom in the house making ties with a home machine. Since then, like I've told you, we're in a downtown location. We have 10 people on our team, and we have a full-service men's and women's, alteration shop.
So you mentioned something when you were talking about why you got into the business of opening up your own shop. You said people pay too much for clothes. Why do people pay too much for clothes?
Well, I think that the consumer is now becoming educated for manufacturing conditions, where things are made, and the high price point gets paid by the consumer, and the margin is built into that price. Over at Peter Field, we are debt-free, bootstrapped right here. And what that means to the consumer is we can charge less for a comparable product that other people are already buying from overseas manufacturing.
Okay, so we're going to ask Ben the question about, how can he charge less in a minute. But I do want to get to this one question, because this is a little bit of our elevator pitch construct. Is the first prize, Ben, of the Elevator Pitch Plus contest is $5,000. If you win the first prize, what are you going to do with the $5,000?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. I mean, the elevator pitch is really exciting, and for Peter Field to be involved it's really an honor. And right now, a lot of our money goes towards new machines. Different machines have different specializations, and each member on our team specialize in different things, whether it's men's products, women's products, or even accessories, for example. So each individual machine can make more things. For example, a shirt needs various different machines, and without those machines, we can't make shirts. But once we can make shirts, then we can sell them and create jobs and build out our manufacturing side.
So if you're making a shirt, you make a shirt on different machines?
That's correct. Yeah, different types of sewing machines have very unique and different purposes and functions.
So part of the shirt is made on one sewing machine and part of the shirt is made on a different sewing machine?
Exactly. And for example, if you look at a collar, different types of stitches, as well as, let's say, buttons, for example, that would be a different machine than a regular single needle that most people are familiar with.
So right now you're saying you and your partner and a number of tailors?
That's correct.
Okay, and each tailor has their own machine, or does the tailors go from machine to machine, or how does that
Yeah, so
work?
we have stations where each tailor will, like I said,
Go ahead. We're gonna switch over to a slide here. Go ahead, Gene. Okay, just so we had to do a little bit of switching things around here, but so each tailor we were talking about each tailor has a machine.
that's correct.
Okay.
And so, depending upon if they're working on, let's say, a suit jacket, they'll need machines to work on jackets. If a young woman's working on a dress, for example, that would be a different machine for a hemming on a dress.
Okay. So if you win the $5,000, it gives you more different machines.
That's correct.
And gives you different kinds of capabilities.
Right, and with those capabilities, we can make more products to bring to market and sell, ultimately bringing jobs to those machines to make more stuff at an affordable price point right here in the city.
So what we did here is Gene came in here. He's a little bit late, and he got on the phones here. So we're if you do have a call relative to men's clothing or business, do we have a call?
Yeah, we call.
Okay. We'll go ahead and put the call on, and we'll see what you have to say. Go ahead, caller.
Good evening, gentlemen. How can a person like me do something about when I look at American companies in terms of the unfair competition, in terms of how the tax structure, how my government is somehow subsidizing foreign companies to come over here, especially to compete in the clothing industry? What can I do besides buy American?
That's the solution, is to make intelligent choices, such as buying American-made clothing and caring about where your clothes are made.
Okay, so let me build on your question. I'm going to go ahead and...
But when I look at the tax structure, and I look at my American government is helping these foreign companies to come over here and plus subsidizing them, I have a problem. That's unfair competition.
Okay, so I'm going to hang up on you, and Pete
Okay.
and Ben and I are going to explore this for a little bit, because I think this is an interesting question that says that, the caller is saying that a lot of clothing manufacturing has moved offshore. How are you going to compete with this offshore manufacturing?
It's simple. If you think about the educated consumer, which is our target market, people that care about where their clothes are from, such as this gentleman that just called in. If you think about where they get their information from, they can find lots of things through the internet, whether it's our website or other manufacturing companies or where things are coming from. If you think about the educated consumer as an entire market, and you know that with a price point that we can deliver, which is competitive to the overseas, because we don't have debt. We use crowdfunding to raise money. We don't have the overhead that a large corporation does that you see some of the bigger box retailers that they have, as well as a local brand from somebody like this gentleman might be interested in a made in Chicago brand. We're hoping it will attract customers as well.
So how is an educated buyer different than an uneducated buyer?
That's a good question. Ultimately, if they buy something, that's if they need something, they want it. If you think about when somebody wants to look good, they have a job interview. They might not go research where they can buy a suit made in America for a job interview, but if they've seen success with their friends, or they might go on a Yelp, for example, and look up a company, they might be able to find things using the resources at hand.
Well, I think the other thing to think about as far as being, I know this is educated or thoughtful, but I think one of the conversations to think about when you're buying something is what's your cost per wearing.
Sure.
It's very interesting because it can cost you X for something, but if you can only wear it 5 times instead of 50 times,
sure,
it's actually going to be more expensive for you. Do we have another call?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, caller. Yes.
There's one other problem. I ain't gonna call the name of the company, but it does begins with a W. But when companies such as yourself go with that company with the W, they tell you this is what you're gonna sell it to us. And if you don't sell it to them, they are so big and everything. They tell you that if you what do you want to call it, the unit price and all that. If you sell it to us at this price because you don't have nobody else to go to, or otherwise it's just like a monopoly. And that's one of the problems when small companies go to that company with a W, and they just dictate to you about certain things.
All right, so I'm going to drop you off here, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So I think the challenge here as being a local company, and one of the advantages of being a Chicago company is not only are you have a debt issue, but it's an inventory question and a fashion issue.
Right, and that's a good point about our particular process. We design, manufacture, and create everything in-house. If you would like a particular item, we make that item for you. We don't need to create 10,000 ties. All we need is to keep fabrics in stock and show them to you when you'd like to buy something, and then we can make that piece using these machines. As we get back to it, we don't have to carry this inventory ultimately overhead, and we don't have to have shelves and shelves of stuff such as this gentleman was dealing with, and we don't need to do that.
I think one of the challenges that's happened with offshore manufacturing is that the way offshore manufacturers get, lower cost products is they build in very high volume.
Yes, sir.
One of the challenges, especially when you're building fashion goods in very high volume, is you'll sell a certain number at a premium price, but if it doesn't particularly take off, you'll sell a much greater number at a very low price.
Right.
And I think one of the advantages that Peter Field has being with local Chicago manufacturing is this idea that says that the suit that I buy either will be made yesterday for me or will be made tomorrow for me.
That's correct.
So I think the dynamic on how do you do things cheaper is if you looked at the cost of carrying that inventory and you looked at the cost of markdowns.
Right. And the loss leader, as you mentioned. Yeah.
So the loss leader from the perspective of
The big box retailers.
I do have a question: is how do these guys make any money when they say, you can buy one and get two for free?
They don't cost a lot to make. And at Peter Field, we don't need to charge a gazillion dollars for one thing. There's margins built into anything. This is a business, sure. But we don't need to triple the price to cover everything that we need. Our 10 stores here in one neighborhood. We don't need to cover those expenses. The way we've set up ourselves without debt and through crowdfunding, we don't have to cover those, that massive overhead that you see in the bigger companies.
Well, I think you have that. I think the other advantage you have is, within reason, if I want to buy one, I can just buy one from you.
Right. Yeah. And if you don't need 3 suits, you might not, need to buy 3 suits.
But I got the last 2 for free.
Sure. I'd like to pick out the free ones first. Sure.
So you actually, before the show, Ben showed me a new product you have out. You want to?
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up. This is a new product we've been working on. It's a microfiber pocket square, and what this is it's a made in America product. As you can see here, it's got our logo on the edge, but it's also a function and fashionable piece. You wear glasses. Mm-hmm. Everyone has a smartphone or a tablet they clean their screen with. A lot of times you get a microfiber piece with your sunglasses when you buy a new pair. This is a fashionable example and functional of something that you can see, you can have, and also at the same time, promoting our economy on a micro level or a macro level right here in the United States.
So the other thing you were talking about, which I thought was intriguing, is your business right now is essentially an office. You're planning on opening up in the next 6 months a retail spot, but you will also, come to my office and measure me.
So we do a number of different things on our product as well as alteration side. Like I mentioned, we have some space downtown. We were recently accepted in the ICNC program in the Kinsey Corridor for manufacturing space.
Okay.
And as soon as it's financially viable, we'll be able to move to a street level location where we can have more walk-in traffic, for example, so new people can find out about us.
So what is this corridor manufacturing space?
Sure, there's a number of warehouses in just west of the West Loop, right here in the city, that are set up for smaller incubator type programs where they try to target scaling businesses and companies that are looking for, growth potential with flexible lease terms. And we were like I said, we were recently nominated, or at least accepted into this program, which is great for us because the plan is to work towards, the manufacturing of our own products right here.
So a lot of people don't realize that in Chicago, which has always been a center for manufacturing, there are now a set of essentially manufacturing incubators.
That's correct.
And if you are manufacturing at home or manufacturing in a small space like Peter Field is, that these places give you first space on flexible terms.
Sure.
But I think on the other hand, like many other of the incubators or accelerators in the Chicago area, you're going to be in an environment that's going to be, I think, somewhat exciting from a development perspective.
Yeah, and they can provide the resources that smaller businesses need that we don't necessarily have, currently in-house.
So when we look going forward here with these resources, what other resources besides just space do you perceive you're going to get from this manufacturing incubator?
Sure. So if you think about what it takes to get a garment on the market, on the shelves, all the things that we don't really think about on a day-to-day level, whether it's sourcing fabric, sourcing machines, installation, training, employee development, as well as if you think about packaging, shipping, all that stuff that we will do locally here, we can save money on because we don't have to pay for overseas shipment, for example, as well as store level service that we like to provide with the customer when we're talking through things or trying to achieve a particular vision that they have in mind.
So how is my service at Peter Fields going to be different than what I would get at say a Nordstrom?
Sure, we have a very capable sales staff that will walk through with each customer, whether it's an alteration or a particular vision for a tie, for example. We have a very hands-on approach where it's a one-to-one relationship that we build with our customers.
So if I came to you and needed a tie designed, how do you design a tie for me?
So we work with a company that creates and prints onto fabric. So we have fabric in stock, but we also have a company here in California that we work with that prints colors and patterns onto fabric. From that fabric, we create neckties, bow ties, and pocket squares, or whatever you're looking for in particular, and we can utilize those resources to create a truly custom piece.
So if I had a design that I wanted across pocket squares and ties for maybe some affair, I could come to you and you would
Absolutely.
integrate it in. Do we have a call, Gene?
Yes.
All right, go ahead. Yes, caller.
With a company like yours, how do you get them to give you a break? When you look at some of the bigger companies, how they roll out certain things, like they put in sewage system, new sidewalk, and on and on and on. But I don't hear about them giving, like the small guys, who is the ones that really hire the most amount of people. But like I said before, they give big companies all kinds of break and throw all kinds of things their way.
Okay, so we have a good answer to that. I'm going to drop you off, and we're going to explore that. So we talk about breaks, and we were talking about the manufacturing incubator.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the manufacturing incubator.
Sure.
And how is that the government helping you as a small guy?
So there are programs set up that we're actually exploring now currently. The incubator that I had mentioned, which is pretty exciting. Something that I mentioned earlier was flexible lease terms. For a smaller business like us, we want to scale. We want to get big. We have a plan. We're following it. With that, we need some flexibility at the other end, whether it's through flexible lease terms or resources that they can provide for us temporarily, whether it's through staffing or paperwork, accounting, for example.
So what essentially the government or some government help agencies do is they'll go and they'll find a space and they'll remodel the space.
Right.
And they will ensure that that space is going to keep going. And they will then make that space available to a small company like Peter Field. And one of the real exciting things, as I was talking about in Chicago, that you're not seeing in other places is typically, that space has been for people to go write code or software, developers or, engineers. Mm-hmm. And Chicago is one of the few places in the United States. There's space in a number of places. There's the one you're looking at, West Loop. There's the one up on Goose Island. There's actually a one that I work with up in Skokie that is focused on biotech.
Right.
And all of these are actually giving you space where you can manufacture, you can set up a business on flexible terms. So there are a lot of breaks that do happen for big businesses, and we do sometimes scratch our head and say, how does this work that all of a sudden these people are locating in Chicago? But on the other hand, there is a broad emphasis for new business. So I'm going to hold off on any more calls, Gene, because I have a few more things I want to cover here with Ben. So, Ben, what do you think has really helped you be successful as a business person?
We found that customer service is priority one. Repeat business today is huge for us. They come back. They like the things that we're talk about doing. We can get them excited about new products that we have. For example, the microfiber pocket square. It's something nobody's seen and nobody's had a chance to feel and touch. But when they come in or we meet them, they tell their friends about it. So we like customer service. The other thing is we know with our manufacturing here, we can deliver a solid product, locally maintained and created and sourced, and bring it to market using that customer service that I had mentioned.
So what's an example of a real successful, or give me an example of how you made a customer really happy?
Well, I mean, on a daily basis, we do
a
number of different things.
I want a real example, not platitudes.
Sure. I mean, we have success stories that are deep and wide, Mark. If you go on, for example, some of these user review websites such as a Yelp, you could probably find out a couple of particular ones. In our current setup, like I said, we have this men's and women's full service alteration shop. We've done very big things in a very short amount of time, and we've saved some people.
So what's a big thing you did in a short period of time?
A young gentleman last week had a interview in Austin, Texas. No other alteration shops open on the weekends or after 5. And he came in late Friday afternoon, and by Saturday morning, his suit was done, and he was on the first flight out of town Monday morning of this week to Austin, Texas. He told me he'd call me when he'd get back, let me know how it went. So I'm looking forward to that call.
So he came in at
Friday evening,
and Monday morning?
It was on his way right to Austin, Texas, to a second round, could be even final round interview with a large company, which is pretty exciting for him.
Okay, so you have a minute left. Visualize for me Peter Field 2 years from now.
Sure. I'm glad you brought that up. As soon as it's we're financially capable, we'll be on a street level. We're also going to have some manufacturing with different types of products. Think about a made in Chicago men's and women's clothing company. All custom, fully bespoke, with fabrics that are locally sourced or at least tried to find in the United States. And customer service to back it up, as well as affordable price point. With that, we can create jobs and get people back to work here in the city, because there's a great community here, and really happy to be part of it.
Okay. So you should be looking for Peter Field. I'm going to do a little bit of score bookkeeping here. Let me flip through some slides. I want you guys to remember the Small Business Expo that's at the UIC Forum on October 3rd. Actually, our winners will be announced at the Small Business Expo. And what we're going to do in a workshop is, if you win, here's your curse, if it happens to be a curse. If you win, you will actually be part of a workshop where you'll give your elevator pitch.
Right.
And then the attendees of the workshop will critique your elevator pitch. So
we're ready.
So we do want to encourage you to go to the Small Business Expo on October 3rd. Some reasons why people come to SCORE: to help start a business or financing or certain strategic issues relative to growing or their business. Events to pay attention to, as we have 2 more guests, and I'll talk about that on our program. We're doing a presentation October 1st, the Small Business Expo. Ben was our fifth guest. We have two more, House Financial and Utopia. As we've talked about with SCORE, we have free counseling, online booking, workshops, and training. You can find SCORE on social media, Twitter at SCORE Chicago, YouTube, SCORE Chicago Video, our website, www.scorechicago.org. Email us at SCOREChicago, or if you need some help, give us a call at 312-353-7724. I want to thank Ben for being my guest, and Gene for being on the phones, and Steve and Tiffany and the whole CanTV team for being wonderful, and we'll see you next week.